So today I'll be reading a fairy tale story that probably you are really familiar with. It is Snow White and the Queen. A retelling of the Brothers Grimm fairy tale by Catherine Follett, illustrated by Fabio Leone. Focus question: how do the Queen's choices guide the plot? Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who longed for a baby. One winter day, as the queen sat sewing by an open window, she pricked her finger with a needle. 2 drops of blood fell and landed on the snow. The queen noticed how striking the scarlet blood had appeared against the dazzling white, all surrounded by an ebony window frame. "I want a girl with skin as white as snow, lips as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony," she wished out loud. Not long afterward, the king and queen had a baby just as the queen had envisioned. The girl's skin was as white as winter snow, so they named her Snow White. When the girl was still an infant, the young queen died. The king was grief-stricken, but eventually his loneliness led him to a new wife. The new queen was very beautiful and spent many hours preening before an enormous, ornate golden mirror. She became obsessed with her appearance and cast an enchantment upon her beloved mirror. "Mirror, you must reveal anything I wish to know and never ever lie," the queen commanded. The mirror shimmered in response. "Who is the most beautiful in all the world?" the queen asked. "You are the most beautiful, my queen," the mirror replied, and the queen sighed with satisfaction. Each time she asked, the mirror answered the same, and each time the queen was soothed and reassured. For a while, years passed in peace, but when Snow White turned 16, the queen inquired again, "Who is the most beautiful in all the world?" The mirror shimmered and held its silence. The queen hissed, "You know that you cannot lie." "Snow White is the most beautiful," admitted the mirror. The queen blazed with envy, but knowing the king adored his daughter, she stood for a time. Later that year, however, the queen was called away to war. The very day he departed, the queen summoned a hunter to the palace. "Take this girl into the forest," she said, shoving Snow White toward him, "and kill her." The hunter knew the queen was cruel to servants who disobeyed, so with a heavy heart, he ushered the girl deep into the woods. "Please," begged Snow White, "if you'll let me leave, I'll stay in the forest and never return." The hunter could not bear to harm Snow White, so let her escape, assuming wild animals could not complete a job that he could not. Snow White fled through the undergrowth, alone and afraid. Just as her strength ebbed and her fingers stiffened with cold, she spied a curious little cottage with the whiffs of smoke rising from a chimney. Inside was a table with 7 chairs, 7 plates, and 7 goblets, though no one appeared to be home. In the next room, she found 7 little beds. Exhausted, she curled up on one and soon fell asleep. When Snow White awoke, she was surrounded by 7 men, all in heavy work clothes, all smelling kindly, and all about half her size. "Don't be afraid," one said. "We're merely miners who spend each day tunneling for gold in the mountains." "And who might you be?" When Snow White explained who she was and told them about the queen, the dwarf grew grave. "You can hide here as long as you wish, but if the queen learns that you are alive, she may come for you yet." And the dwarf warned Snow White, "When we're away, never let anyone in." Meanwhile, as soon as the hunter returned to the palace alone, the queen rushed to the mirror. "Who is the most beautiful in the world?" she demanded. The mirror shrugged, and the queen's eyes narrowed. "Snow White, hiding with the dwarfs in the mountains, is still the most beautiful," the mirror finally replied. The queen grew nauseated. Oh, wait me a minute. Okay. "Snow White, hiding with the dwarfs in the mountains, is still the most beautiful," the mirror finally replied. The queen grew nauseated with envy and could not rest while the girl was still alive. Disguising herself as an old peddler, the queen collected a bag of ribbons and buttons and set off through the forest. When she reached the dwarf's cottage, she called out, "Pretty things for sale." Snow White picked out, "I must not let anyone in," she explained, "for the dwarfs were gone." "Then come out and look," the peddler coaxed, holding up a red ribbon that shimmered like a ruby against Snow White's skin. "I suppose I could," Snow White said hesitantly. The moment Snow White stepped outside, the queen crinched the ribbon so tightly around the girl's throat that she suffocated her. Soon, Snow White fell to the ground, lifeless. The queen sped home to a golden mirror. "Who is the most beautiful in all the world?" she panted. "You're the most beautiful, my queen," said the mirror. With that, the queen's red-hot rage finally dissipated. When the dwarfs returned home, they found Snow White lying there, pale and motionless. They cut the ruby ribbon. With a choking gasp, Snow White awake. "This is the work of the queen," the dwarfs warned. "Never let anyone in, and never accept anything from anyone." Weeks later, still confident that Snow White was dead, the queen addressed her mirror. "Who is the most beautiful in the world?" she asked. "Snow White, revived by the dwarfs, is the most beautiful," the mirror answered. The queen's throat tightened. Drawing upon her skill with potions, she crafted a poisoned apple, then uttered a clever incantation that made the red half deadly but the green half safe. They disguised herself as an old farmer and set back out across the mountains. As soon as Snow White saw someone approaching, she latched the shutters and barred the door. "Are you afraid of me, child?" she farmer laughed. "I've come to sell apples." "I must not let anyone in," Snow White said. "I don't need to come in, dear. You can look from the window," the woman said. "I cannot accept anything either." "Well, it's a shame," the farmer said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "As the year's crop is especially delicious." She slit happily in half and took a big bite. The sound of the crisp fruit made Snow White's mouth water. She opened the door a crack and saw the farmer contentedly chewing. "Maybe I could try one apple, but it must be that one, the one you are safely eating," Snow White said. "Of course," the farmer smiled, handing the rest half to Snow White. When the first bite of poisoned apple lodged in Snow White's throat, the world drained of sound and color, and she collapsed to the ground. The queen dashed back to her beloved mirror. "Who is the most beautiful in all the world?" she pleaded. "You're the most beautiful," the mirror replied, and relief washed over the queen's troubled heart. When the dwarfs saw the door ajar, they rushed inside and found Snow White lying where she had fallen. There were no ribbons they might untangle and no wounds they might heal. She was cold. She was dead. The dwarfs could not bear to bury Snow White, so they constructed a delicate coffin of gold and glass and laid her to rest on a mountainside. Snow White appeared merely asleep, as beautiful as ever. Months later, the dwarfs spotted the queen's partly returning from war. "We should bring poor Snow White back to her father," the dwarf decided, "since the queen cannot hurt herself any more." The seven dwarfs gently bore the glass coffin through the forest. At the palace, the king reunited with his queen, who seemed uncommonly serene. "And where's my daughter?" the king asked. "Our sweet Snow White ran away," the queen said, shedding very real-looking tears. Just then, the dwarf arrived at the palace, carrying a glass coffin with Snow White inside. Sobbing, the king lifted his daughter from the coffin. He embraced her so fiercely that the apple in her throat was dislodged. Snow White's eyelids fluttered. She was alive. The king and the dwarf were so overjoyed and that they did not notice the queen flying up the palace steps to her chamber in a blind rage. She would never be the most beautiful as long as Snow White lived. "Unless, who is the most beautiful in all the world?" she demanded of the mirror. Snow White "No!" the queen exploded. "I am the most beautiful. I am. Tell me that I am the most beautiful." "My queen, I cannot lie, and Snow White the most." "No!" screamed the queen. "I am the most beautiful, and you will tell me so." The mirror shuddered. "For the final time, tell me." The queen shrieked. The mirror whooped like water and crackled like ice. "My queen," it began, but the queen's spell was too strong, and the mirror could not lie. The mirror shattered, setting shards of glass falling all directions. One shard flew straight into the queen's heart, killing her. With the jealous queen gone forever, Snow White was safe at last. The king offered to reward the dwarfs, but they asked only the Snow White visit the mountain cottage now and then. Snow White and the king were glad to oblige, and all of them lived happily ever after. Well, I remember that in one version, the person who awaked Snow White and rescued her from that poisoned apple was a prince, but not there's Snow White's father. And yeah, in that version, Snow White and that prince married to each other and lived happily ever after. And do you remember the my review of the book The Land of Stories the other day? Well, I told you that in that version there's a plot twist that the queen, do you know why the reason the queen wanted to be the most beautiful woman in the world? Well, all of the problem in the world have the reason behind it. The queen wanted to become the most beautiful woman because she fell in love madly with a boy called Mira, and in order to impress that boy and want her to love her back, no, actually he already loved her, but he loved her for her beauty. So she wanted to be as beautiful as possible, and she wanted that boy to love her forever. But you will find out more about it in that book. So remember to check it out if you want to learn more about Snow White and the Evil Queen. So the glossary: cinched mean fasten or pull together slightly. Coaxed is gently persuade someone to do or say something. Dislounge mean knock or force out of a secure position. Dissipated mean disappear by spreading thin. Incantation, a set of words that are spoken or sung to cast a magic spell. Oblige is to do something as a favor. Obsessed is completely occupied with thinking about something. Peddler, traveling sell person who sells and trades many kinds of objects. Preening, spending time in improving and admiring one's appearance. Serene, peaceful and calm. Soothed, calmed or comforted, caused to feel better. Suffocated, stop the breathing of a person or other animal.
Good job.
Let's do the quiz. A, definitely. Which of the following words best describe the new queen? The new queen. Self-obsessed, greedy, intelligent, lonely. Self-obsessed. She clearly obsessed with appearance, right? Which event happens before the queen tell the hunter to take Snow White to the forest and kill her? What is the fate of Snow White stepping out of the cottage to look at the peddler's item? What causes Snow White to wake up after she is suffocated by the queen's ribbon? What does the queen go to the cottage where Snow White is for a second time? Why do the dwarfs use glass for Snow White's coffin? What was the other main purpose for writing the story? Exciting story. What finally causes the queen to leave Snow White alone? As their reward for saving Snow White, the dwarfs asked the king. Choices guide the plot. Well, it's up to you, right? So I'm sorry for that.
Wow, perfect
Okay,
score.
thank you so much.